Okay, thank you. Um, Glad to be here with Kansas Forest Service, Jason Hartman. Um, Larry said my primary job is fire prevention. That kind of used to be these last couple of years. I guess I haven't done a very good job. Sorry about that. I'll try to do better. Um, Also do a lot of prescribed firework, and like all of us in the staff, we all kind of do a little bit of everything. But when we were talking with KDM, the fire marshal's office, we were thinking of subjects, and we thought the new fire compact might be a fairly good one to maybe introduce, talk about, see what questions there are. Um, and one more thing I didn't want to mention along the lines of that kind of prevention work that I do, try to do, is protecting homes from wildfires. And to that end, we've asked NFPA to come in this fall and do a class they call Assessing Structure Ignition Potential. It's a really great class. I just went through it out in Boise, Idaho about a month ago. The idea of it is to take and train fire service to then go out in their community and go out to landowners' properties and say, here's the things, look at this here, look at those leaves in the gutter there, look at that wood under the deck over there, just these little things that they can look at that they may not have thought of, that when a wildfire comes, that structure can withstand it. And the wildfire basically can pass it right on by and it'll be fine. So be looking for that on the NFPA's training schedule, as well as the Kansas Forest Service will put out the specific dates and location when we get closer. So now to the topic, and looking at the clock, I got an hour and 45 minutes. I think I can do it. I may have to rush a little bit, but I'll try. Uh, when we thought about doing this, we thought, well, the compact just recently passed. Maybe we should kind of introduce it a little bit, talk about what it might mean, have a discussion about what people think might be the best uses of it, and try to answer some questions. And then we were like, well, we have a few questions too, so maybe there'd be questions we wouldn't have the answer to necessarily. So I called a former Kansan and now with Wyoming State Division of Forestry, that their fire management officer, as I said, got his fire service start in Kansas, has since worked in North Dakota and now Wyoming, Anthony Schultz. And he not only helped develop the presentation, but he said, hey, I'll come to the presentation, and he's actually here today. So if I have any questions I don't know, I'll defer them to Anthony, or if you have questions after this, catch him after we're done. He'd be glad to visit with you. Both in his North Dakota job and now with Wyoming, he's done a lot of compact, both sending and receiving, so the benefits of it, he's pretty well versed in. So what, this past April, through the work of you guys, the fire service, the Firefighters Association, Fire Marshal's Office, Kansas Forest Service, and Emergency Management, we did work through the legislative process to have the House bill passed to become officially a member of the Great Plains Interagency Fire Compact. It is one of 8 across the nation. The states specifically that we're connected with most closely start with New Mexico and go clear up through the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. That does not mean those are the only ones we're tied into. Those are just our compact we are now a member of, but compact to compact works just as smoothly as within your own compact. Our most closely situated ones would be South Central, Oklahoma. Big rivers would be Missouri and Iowa. And then going out from there, Great Lakes, Northwest, Mid-Atlantic, Southwestern, Northeastern. So where did compacts come from? Well, the overriding authority goes clear back to the Weeks Law of like 1911. But more specifically, this particular law enacted, I don't remember, do you remember the exact, 2007? Is that right, Anthony? Yeah, 2007. A federal law was enacted basically providing the authority for states to work through this process of state-to-state requests for wildland fire specific. The original act says forest fires, but it's to all wildland fires. It's not just forest fire. Resources to share them across boundaries. So specifically in Kansas, so the way the federal law was set up, they created this law that said, okay, states, you have the authority to do this now at the federal level. to make it official within each state. What each state then had to do was decide at their own legislative level, yes, we want to opt in. If you do not opt in at your own state legislative level, you're not part of the compact. And so that's what we did this past April. It became official that Kansas is a part of the Great Plains Fire Compact. So that established it. So what are the purposes as laid out both in the federal and also in our own state law? Promote the effective prevention and control of wildland fires in the Great Plains region of the United States. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to maintain adequate firefighting services by member states. No one state is going to draw down their own resources to the point that they can no longer protect everybody at home. Vice versa, if their own resources are getting drawn down so far by their own activity, they can then supplement and bring in aid from others compacting states of the region. So specifically, what does it help us, the Forest Service, do? Well, it helps us it just helps us one more way besides the training and equipment that we've always provided in the grants to try to help you guys with, it's that 1-2% of fires, basically, that the fire service handles the other 99.8% just great. Better than anybody in the country as far as I'm concerned for handling the type of fires that we handle. The fire service is the first and often the only response and all that's needed, and you guys do great. We just want to be able to supplement that for that little sliver of the unprecedented. Like it says there now is, with us joining, there's 45 states that are members. And 9 provinces that are members of a compact. So that's the pool that could potentially be drawn from. Pretty wide pool of potential. So how is the compact? It is a national organization. It does have a regional, I guess. So there is some organization to it. Each member state or province appoints 3 administrators, with the state forester and the fire manager or the fire management officer being one of those 2 at least. And then you can also appoint a 3rd. And the main role of that administrator, those 3 administrators, is to be the point of contact for when those state to state or state to province requests are starting to happen. That's the main purpose of having those people designated, is so that communication is already in place. Nobody has to look up, okay, who do I call in Kansas for help? It's already pre-established. From those 3 from each state, they appoint 2 officers, and currently our guest here is the chair for this year, or the rest of 2017, so a couple more weeks. And the current secretary is his counterpart in the state of Colorado, a gentleman named Vaughn Jones. Those people serve on a 2-year rotation, and the main role of the officers and the representation to the compact is to establish kind of an annual operating plan, a user guide for how we're going to go about taking care of compact needs during the upcoming season at their annual meeting. So what resources are available from compact requests? You can get operational resources, such as additional engines, hand crews. By overhead, I mean like task force leader, division soup, operations chief, plans chief, any of that kind of stuff. Any ICS position you can request through a compact. Even I've seen compact requests come through for like prescribed burn bosses, things like that. So you can get any type of additional resource, and as well as supplies. Rodney mentioned we're not going the retardant route yet. If we did go the retardant route yet, at some point with our aviation program, and we had a short supply, we could, through a compact request, maybe get a boost of that kind of supply. So there's a wide range of possibilities. Aviation, such as seats, the larger tankers, reconnaissance aircraft, rotor wing, aerial supervision. That's one thing that those air-to-air, airspace control issues, that kind of eye in the sky, uh, air air platform based air traffic controls, basically what that aerial supervision, air attack supervisor is what it's called, or an air operations boss, branch director, things like that we could get. Prevention, again, because it does say that the intent was not just the control, but also the prevention. So you can get like shared media efforts. If other states have put together a campaign for their public education, we could borrow that. We could borrow their public education specialists, things like that. Um, Training resources, we can use the compact to bring in subject matter experts for either classroom or in the field mentor-based training. Maybe some of the aviation training that's obviously been identified as a need. Compact could be a resource to get some of those subject matter experts to come in and help us out. So a lot of these resources, they aren't something that's unique. They aren't, Compact by no means is the only source to get these kind of resources. So what's some of the advantages of them? Um, if a compact resource is brought in, uh, they wouldn't have any other job while they're around. They could focus solely on making sure that fire was out and stayed out. They wouldn't have to worry about returning to a day job or leaving behind their own personal obligations. They could just focus on that fire or the series of fires that was threatening or whatever. They also are a fire resource, but they're a wildfire specific. They could free up other resources to go take care of structure fires, accidents, medicals that came up within the jurisdiction while wildfire issues are potentially shortening their ability to respond. They would be wildfire specific, able to boost that capability within wherever they happen to come in and help us out. Um, and they would be able to do that not just once the fire, they could do that either pre, during, or post. They could be brought in ahead of a threat. They could be brought in during an ongoing fire, and they could stick around after the main threat's over for a little bit to make sure no further threats happened. Compact would not be tied to any particular declaration or anything like that necessarily. Could be, wouldn't have to be. A typical time frame would be around 2 weeks. Could be less, could be a little more, but also, as Anthony pointed out as we were talking about this, they are subject to their responsibilities back in their home state. So big fire breaks out. He loans us resources from Wyoming. Big fire breaks out there. He may call his counterpart here, or his state forester would call Larry and say, yeah, we kind of need that resource back. So there is that potential with the compact system. So an example of the kind of experience that would be coming in, like I said, 99% of the fires are handled with the great skill, and nobody questions that skill. So what possibly addition could be brought in with compact resources, and this is just one example of maybe a little bit of specialization that would come from them that could be a little bit of a boost possibly. Um, just our staff alone this year was on 40 type 1, 2, and 3 incidents. And compact resources likely would have that same level of experience with handling that 1 or 2% that isn't the normal everyday type of fire response, and they would be very well versed in that type of response. The training level could vary based on the sending state, the southern states. They are not as strict with the NWCG standards as some of the western states, so depending on the sending state or receiving state negotiation, that could vary somewhat. So how would it work? How would it work to try to bring in compact resources? Well, first of all, that it's designed according to the law to be done as quickly as possible by phone call, email, um, state forester to state forester, or one of those other two designated administrator contacts. Um, Makes the phone call, tells about what the condition, what the need, what the time frame, costs are negotiated, and things like that. Phone call done, the request is done. That can be the sum total of it. In some cases, there is the federal dispatch system would also get involved just as a formality. We've helped out with a compact request to Idaho this past summer that initiated as just that phone call to phone call type situation. Before it was all said and done, our federal dispatch system did get involved with issuing the actual resource order request, but that wouldn't always be the case. Um, just yesterday, South Dakota was requesting compact assistance. Um, some other states were quicker on the draw than us, and were therefore we got to go instead of our resources. But that would have been truly just a state-to-state negotiation without the federal system involved. Um, so specifically, what all would we look at? We would never make this decision in a box. We would look at the criteria, and we would negotiate with all of our partners in the state, from the local, state, federal level. That KIWC Jonathan mentioned would be a major contributor to making any compact resource decision based on the conditions, the needs, everybody else's kind of feel of what's going on, what needs to be done. It's kind of the same. And we would also, as an agency, have to evaluate. If you're bringing people in, as has kind of been hinted at in some other, they're going to need a little bit of support, a little bit of help. They're going to need somebody to set up lodging, food, things like that. And if all of our limited staff is already fully committed and not available to assist with that, that's something we would have to consider. And the funding. The federal resource system is very efficient. This is more efficient, but it also has a cost with it. People don't leave their home units, and their local taxpayers should not expect them to leave their home units or states without some sort of reimbursement. But there is some negotiation, but there still would be some cost, and we would have to figure out what avenues we're going to pursue to recoup that cost for the sending jurisdiction. Um, some conversations we've had in the past as we work through this process, um, some examples of had we had the compact, some things that could have been done. Things like when the Oklahoma fires were heading in, Oklahoma was going to give us aviation resources for a limited window, no cost at all. We've had offers from other states to send in ground resources such as additional engines for basically they'd cover their base pay if we covered overtime, some things like that. So there's lots of negotiation that could be done in that arena.